نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد بسم الله. We will continue the tafsir of Surah Rahman inshallah. So last we talked about how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will focus on taking account of everyone on Day of Judgment. And then there is no escape from the sovereignty, from the kingdom of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So we will continue from verse number 35, where now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gets into the discussion of what will happen on the Day of Judgment and how He will treat the disbelievers, and then how the believers will be rewarded. So inshallah we'll go through some of those verses to understand that whole scenario. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم يرسل عليكما شواظ من نار ونحاس فلا تنتصران. There will be sent upon you a flame of fire and smoke, and you will not defend yourself. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving an example of how people will try to escape on the Day of Judgment, the punishment. But angels will throw fire at them and smoke so that they will be controlled and managed. There will be no escape that day. And then towards the end of the verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَا تَنْتَصِرَانِ. It comes from intisar, meaning to help each other on occasion of difficulty or challenge. So the jinn and the ins, the jinns and the humans that are mentioned, they will not be able to help each other. So, in this world, when we are in trouble, we are able to get some help from our family, from our friends. That day, no one will be able to help. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? فَإِذَا انشَقَّتِ السَّمَاءُ فَكَانَتْ وَرْدَةً كَالدِّهَانِ. And when the heaven is split open and becomes dark red color like rose and like hot molten oil. So there is some imagery here which is important to understand. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is painting the picture of how the sky or heavens will look on that day. And we don't consider it on a daily basis, but when you go out, you find there's one thing constant around you, the sky. Right? I mean, it gives you that sense of stability around you. So certain days, if you see all of a sudden, let's say close to sunset, or even in the morning, you have like orange sky or red sky. It concerns you, it bothers you. You think something is going to happen. Or it gets really dark, cloudy, and you're also concerned, what will going to happen next? So it's a way that we are grounding ourselves every day when we go out. You understand that the world is stable. On that day, that stability will be broken. And you can see it. I also want to mention here, the sky will be split apart. And it will be molten. Imagine you can convert any metal by putting it through extreme heat. It becomes liquid, gets molten. So sky will be as if it has been molten into some form of liquid. That will be the scene that day. It will be bright red, the color of a rose. So how terrifying will be that scene? That's what we need to think about. Allah is letting you know today it will be a very difficult day. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? فَيَوْمَئِذٍ لَا يُسْأَلُ عَنْ ذَنْبِهِ إِنسٌ وَلَا جَانٌ. Then on that day, none will be asked about his sin among humans or jinns. So when you listen to this verse, it may sound very confusing. What does that mean? No one will be asked about their sins. Because from our childhood, we have been told that you will be asked about your deeds on the Day of Judgment, that you should prepare yourself for that day. But here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, no one will be asked. Very conflicting just on the surface of its meaning. But scholars have explained it, and then you will understand. And this is why Qur'an requires reflection. You cannot just read verses and then move on. What does that mean? How does it apply to you? So there are a few interpretations. So one is because your deeds are already recorded in the book of deeds. There's no need to ask. All your deeds are very clear. If you've done good deeds, they are clearly written. If you've done bad deeds, they are clearly written. So no one needs to ask you whether you have good deeds or bad deeds. your balance is already telling you on the book of deeds whether you are someone who's going to go to hellfire or to paradise. So there's no need to ask. The other interpretation is, and we have other verses in the Quran that explain this, that on the day of judgment, the mouths will be sealed. So when you are asked something, you will describe through your mouth. But that day, mouths will be sealed. So no one will be asking you and you will be able to reply. Your body and limbs will reply, explaining that, yes, I did this sin. He made me go here. He made me do this. So no need to ask that day. It comes in Surah Mursalat. هذا يوم لا ينطقون ولا يؤذن لهم فيعتذرون. That will be a day when they shall not speak, and they will not be permitted to put forth any excuse. So now you understand the rationale. When someone asks you, and let's say you committed a sin, you made a mistake, what do? We come up with excuses. No, this happened, that happened. That day there is no moment to offer any excuses, right? So there's no need to ask. All the deeds are already written. Your body parts will proclaim themselves that you have committed such and such sin. No need to ask. You will not be given a chance. You cannot even present an excuse. And then there's a third interpretation, which is angels don't need to ask you. If someone is a criminal, someone needs to be punished, it will be clear from their faces because of the punishment. So it will be very obvious that these are the criminals, they need to be punished. No need to ask any question. So subhanAllah, this is how you appreciate the work of the scholars. Because on the surface, if you read Qur'an, sometimes it could be very confusing. If you were just reading translation, you should be confused at this point. What does that mean? You will not be asked, or jinns will not be asked, humans will not be asked. Well, you will be asked, but in a different way. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? يُعْرَفُ الْمُجْرِمُونَ بِسِيمَاهُمْ فَيُؤْخَذُ بِالنَّوَاصِي وَالْأَقْدَامِ. The criminals will be known by their marks, and they will be seized by their forelocks and the feet. So بِسِيمَاهُمْ, meaning the marks of disbelievers. We just talked about that their faces will be turned black, and they will be clearly identified on the day of judgment. And they will be humiliated in a few different ways. So some will be dragged from their foreheads. Some will be dragged from their feet. Some will be dragged from, sometimes from the forehead or the feet. And some will be tied, their forehead and legs will be tied together, and they'll be dragged and thrown into hellfire. Allah billah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows how many different ways people will be punished that day. But this is just an example that they will be treated very harshly that day. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? هَذِهِ جَهَنَّمُ الَّتِي يُكَذِّبُ بِهَا الْمُجْرِمُونَ. This is hell, which the criminals deny. So, as the disbelievers will be punished, they will be also affirmed. They will be told, this is the hellfire that you were denying. In this world, when you thought there would be no accountability, there will be no hell or paradise once you die. This is that hell that you were told about. And it applies not only to disbelievers, it applies to us as sinners, by the way. We cannot read Qur'an and think it's always about them, it's not about us. It is about us. So people who are Muslims, believers, and have committed sins more than good deeds, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala decided for them to go to hellfire, they will also experience similar type of punishment and torture. So as I mentioned, many different punishments will be given. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions one next. يَطُوفُونَ بَيْنَهَا وَبَيْنَ حَمِيمٍ آنٍ. They will go around between it and blistering hot water, which is heated to the highest degree. So they will be burned in hell. And then boiling water will be poured over them. You cannot even imagine in this world. You are boiling water in your kettle, and sometimes skin exposed to the smoke coming out of it. You know how burning that is. Imagine that water, and 70 times more actually in heat, is poured over someone. Very, very harsh punishment. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Ghashiyah, تُسْقَى مِنْ عَيْنٍ آنِيَةٍ. So not only the water will be poured upon them, they will be made to drink that water. They will be given to drink from a boiling spring. And the effect of that boiling water will be that their stomach, intestine, will be melted. Allahu Akbar. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from being in that state. There's more. There's more types of punishment mentioned in Qur'an. And all of that just for us to reflect and say, you know what, I don't want to be in that state. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions Surah Nisa, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا بِآيَاتِنَا سَوْفَ نُصْلِيهِمْ نَارًا كُلَّمَا نَضِجَتْ جُلُودُهُمْ بَدَّلْنَاهُمْ جُلُودًا غَيْرَهَا لِيَذُوقُوا الْعَذَابَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ كَانَ عَزِيزًا حَكِيمًا. Indeed, those who disbelieve in our verses, we will drive them into a fire. Every time their skins are roasted through, we will replace them with other skins, so they may taste the punishment. Indeed, Allah is ever exalted in might and wise. So the skin of disbelievers will be thick, very, very thick. Why? Not so that they can bear punishment, no, because it will take longer for their skin to burn and burn and burn until it is burned until the bones. Does it stop there? No. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will put the skin back. Continue, again and again. It's an endless sequence of punishment. We do not want to be in that state. Sometimes we think of this Jannah and Jahannam too easy in our daily life. You know what, do what you want today and we'll deal with it when the time comes. That's very irrational. That's very nonsensical way of looking at the reality of this world and the world of hereafter. Comes in a narration in Sahih Muslim. People who are in this world, the most prosperous, they have the most luxury of this world. When they will be dipped in hell just for a moment, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will ask them, did you ever see any good in your life? Did you ever see, we think we spend here 70, 80 years, 100 years of luxury. They will be just dipped in hellfire for one moment. They will say, we never felt any pleasure. We never experienced anything. But that's the severity of hellfire. Just one dip and you will forget everything. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us. Of all the pleasures we seek that are against the Sharia, against the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, against His commands, they are fun today, they are no longer fun in the hereafter. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? We talked about the Day of Judgment, we talked about the Jahannam, the punishments of hellfire. I'll give you just one example. Now Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala switches the topic to paradise. And it is mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you always read about the punishment, sometimes you lose hope. In many, many places in the Qur'an, whenever there is a mention of hellfire, there's a mention of Jannah as well. So subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions here in Surah Rahman as وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ. But for he who has feared the position of his Lord are two gardens. So maqam rabbihi, this phrase has two interpretations. So first one is that the person is afraid of standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. On the Day of Judgment, if someone in this life is thinking, you know what, I will die and be standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that fear causes him to steer away from sins and do good deeds, that's the type of person who will get two gardens in paradise. And the other interpretation, a person has inculcated this idea that there's that superior being of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, His majesty, His honor is such that I cannot go against His commands. And that same person will also, again, not commit sin and make sure that he is doing deeds that are pleasing to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the outcome is the same. One person who is more worried about standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and giving accountability. Another person in this life thinking, I understand, to the best of my understanding, how the majesty of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, and I just cannot sin against Him. And you know what is important in this context? We can say whatever we want to say, but where our true belief shows is when we are in private. In front of others in public, we can present ourselves as righteous. But what happens in private is where our inner self is expressed. So it's very important that we are as pious in private as we are in public. فَبِأَيِّ آلَاءِ رَبِّكُمَا تُكَذِّبَانِ. So which of the favors of your Lord would you deny? So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to understand in this world while we are alive the reality of the hereafter. Understand that we are accountable on the day of judgment. Understand that we cannot escape His sovereignty or escape the punishment on that day. Be prepared to face that day with all the good deeds, inshallah, that we have made, and in hope and mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He will forgive us. Allahumma nas'aluka al-jannah wa na'udhu bika min an-nar. Amin ya rabbal alameen. Subhanaka wa bihamdik. Nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta. Nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.